Welcome to America's home for racing for the final day of the 2024 Queen City Gambit. Charlotte Motor Speedway playing host to opening weekend for the 2024 Stars Championship Series, and warm-up is just now getting underway here on the kart track on the infield. The NASCAR turns 3 and 4. A bright morning for everyone as all the classes are together for one final test session before the main events get going here today. This will set the tone, of course, for the championship. It's a month off before we're back on the very first weekend of June with King of the Castle at Newcastle Motorsports Park. But before we get there, we've got to figure out who wins the opening round of the season. My name's Xander Clemens, alongside me, Caleb Vieska. And as we follow John Bonanno, the number one plate here in KA Masters around the racetrack, let's catch you guys up a little bit of what stood out to both of us so far this week.
Yeah, I mean, so far, well, firstly, good morning to you, Xander. Good morning to all our viewers at home. And a lot of things, right? Walked the paddock here this morning. A lot of drivers saying that the track has just been so physical on their ribs and on their hips here this weekend because it's so fast-paced and high speed. Another thing that's really stood out to me is the amount of mechanical issues that we've had at the end of yesterday because of unforeseen stuff that we haven't seen before, right? In some races, like our OKN class and our OKN class, just mechanical issue after mechanical issue for some of these drivers.
Yeah, we saw a couple of kind of non-traditional mechanical issues. We've seen plenty of drivers blow a chain. We have seen maybe a hub slide off, but yesterday Max Christia had the studs fail on the rear tires, so the tire came completely off of the hub and broke the 3 studs that it bolts on, that the lug nuts bolt on. Masters driver Joe Ruck, while he was fighting for the lead and the win, and part of that coming from the vibrations that they get and the massive bumps around this racetrack or the massive curbing. As you can see here in KA Master, nobody's taking any of those inside curbs. They are sky high, it feels like, from an inch off the ground driving these karts around. So they're all rolling right up next to them, but jumping over them, well, it could tweak the frame. More than anything, it could bend or break something else on the chassis. And that level of attrition has added an extra factor to all of the racing that's gone on. We started the weekend here on Friday. 4 rounds of practice for the semi-pro categories, 3 free practices for the pro categories, and then qualifying at the end of the day for each of them. Then that led us into yesterday, a full 12 hours of non-stop racing action, beginning with semi-pros running their first heat race, a second heat, then re-racking them for a pre-final before moving on to the main event grids today. The pro categories had 2 longer heat races, or as known with the Stars Championship Pro Show presented by Mazda Motorsports, they're motos. But now we finally have the starting lineups for these mains, and in KA Masters, there's been 3 drivers that have been through the top of the heap through our heat races and the pre-finals. David Goldman, Ryan Kastner, and John Bonanno. But here in warm-up, Austin Queen has joined the fray as he sits third on that 222 black, white, and red Kubica kart for PSL karting. There's a look at Bonanno coming by. Here's a few more as Anthony Stifler heads on down to turns number 1 and 2. Now the times have shifted a little bit, and we're back up to the big 3 in the Masters class between Bonanno, Kastner, and Goldman at the top of the charts. But Austin Queen, Paul Montepoli, they did put up some respectable lap times yesterday, and at points it looked like they could hang with the leaders, but over the course of the longer distance races, they would eventually fade on back, and we would see just those 3 drivers in the main frame.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday David Goldman took away the first heat and the second heat, and then it looked promising in the pre-final. Didn't end up coming to fruition. Ryan Kastner was the driver who put it on the pole position. We saw John Bonanno go over the rear bumper of David Goldman, trying to make the move on him. Didn't work out. The both of them able to finish. They had great racing the entire way through. And one of the big stories out of yesterday as well, right? John Bonanno just didn't have the speed to really contend with the driver on your screen here of Ryan Kastner or David Goldman, the driver ahead of him. So let's see if John Bonanno and that Comcart team found anything left in whether it's chassis setup, engine, or whatever it may be to kind of, close down that little bit that he needs to get past Ryan Kasner and David Goldman today.
And that's the big point. It was just a little bit for the number 1 plate. He had a couple of pass attempts to ultimately come to no avail yesterday, but he was right there on the bumper, on the cusp of the lead. At points, he was working with either one of those 2 drivers to catch the third one that would get a bit of a gap out front. So he's not far off by any means. And if anything, he might have been holding back a little bit through the heats and the pre-finals, as we have problems on the racetrack for one of the Franklin Motorsports Merlins. That is the 248 of Frank Jeffrey, but he's able to get back going, no issues. Checkers flag flying now. A few drivers bailing out early to the pit lane there. You saw Castor go into the pits, and I believe David Goldman did as well. John Bonanno is going to at least finish his lap and run the full distance here for warm-up, but now we're in kind of familiar territory when it comes to the lap times based on Saturday. 1/10 of a second separating David Goldman to Ryan Castor and John Bonanno. Austin Queen about another 2/10 back with Paul Montepoli right with him. Another 3/10 to find Anthony Stifler and Scott Carapolati. Then Chris McGinley ending 8th here in the warm-up session. Peter Cook in 9th, and Jose Garcia rounds out the top 10 of the 18 KA Masters. So their second warm-up, their final session before those carts get parked for about 2 hours, and they come back at 9:50 a.m. Eastern with the main events. Of course, this is the schedule for today. Warm-ups for all classes. The pro classes will have a warm-up session for each OKN stars and pro stars at 9:10 and 9:20 a.m. There'll be about a 20-minute gap before the semi-pro mains get underway. The pro drivers will be parked until the afternoon with their main events in those hour blocks at 1 and 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 and 11 a.m. Pacific. And for those that may be just joining us here early this morning, this is, of course, the free coverage. You'll be able to watch all of the main events with a KC Premium member subscription for $9.99 a month if you subscribe now or if you haven't already. And make sure to do so on a non-iOS device. If you go on an Apple device like your iPhone, it'll tack on about $3 extra in fees, and show is $12.99. So make sure to save yourself a couple bucks. As we don't see it, YouTube doesn't even see it. It goes straight to Apple's pockets. If you want to save a couple bucks a month there, sign up on an Android or on your laptop or desktop computer. There's the 1-minute signal given from grid marshal Justin Newcomb, and we get set to go green with the youngest stars on the championship, the micro swift category, ages 7 to 10 years old. And we've got a few different drivers at the front of the grid for warm-up based on where they're going to line up. Parker Stewart there is the left side of your screen. He's in that number 22 BJR MDR LN kart. And Parker qualified fantastically well Friday afternoon and kind of hung tough inside the top 10 in the heat races and the pre-final. But ultimately, just like John Bonanno, a last little bit is probably going to be needed for him to be able to fight for the win, depending on how the race shakes out. Because in the pre-final, things did get kind of spread apart yesterday. But there was one driver that was able to carve his way all the way through the pack of the top 10 to the lead and the eventual win. And that was the Jamaican sensation of Zane Burgess. This young superstar is one of the younger drivers on the age bracket. I'm not even sure if he's turned 7 years old yet. Got in on the age waiver last year for the handful of national starts that he made. And this year, this Sodi Racing USA driver has been on fire. Winning races, dominating races earlier on in the season. He did not have the best of runs through the end of this spring stretch when it comes to his raw speed. But yesterday, that speed came to fruition, and the racecraft really was put to the test as he had to methodically cut his way up the pack without losing too much time and ultimately get up to the top spot.
Yeah, he did a really good job yesterday, all day, working his way up the field and carving through it, like you said. So he's the driver that's going to start on the pole position. He won the pre-final, and he's going to start on that front row on the inside on the pole position. But it wasn't easy for him, right? The likes of Santiago Orioli all taking the challenge to Zane Burgess all day yesterday. Danny O'Gara was up there as well for the MPG Motorsports boys. So it definitely wasn't easy for Zane Burgess to make all the moves that he did, but the Sodi Racing USA team had him rolling.
Here is Kristen Thomason leading this major pack of about 7 karts right now, headed to the last turn on the racetrack. That's the number 77 white and orange Kart Republic, and there's a number of others in that group. Easton Kubinski will be another one to keep our eye on. He's not in this pack either. He went out a little further back in that main group. Marcelo Flores. And there is Kubinski with a big lap here to start off the warm-up session. He is running right behind this group, it looks like. Maybe the 8th car in line on that black and blue and yellow AEM karting EOS kart. Easton yesterday led a ton of laps. He had a great qualifying. He's been so fast through all of the sessions to this point. But again, Zane was able to get the better of everyone charging through the pack. And we have to go back a little bit as the Sodi drivers elected to go out near the back of the grid here for warm-up. He's got plenty of clear racetrack in front of him to put some laps in and try and see if there were any changes made overnight, if they have helped him, or if nothing else, a good nut and bolt check both off and on the racetrack to say, yeah, that thing was fast. Maybe we don't touch it, but just make sure it all works here in this practice session. Yeah, correct. So for all these drivers just getting warmed up here, I mean, you know, hence the name of the warm-up, but no hardware for going fastest or for making the most moves in practice. So you know, it's all about finding a good track position here for this morning warm-up. Santiago Orioli and the MPG guys, they're working together. Orioli and O'Gara out there on the racetrack together. He was purple for a second, but Jake Manalio in the 91 Team Ferris Racing machine just went purple, a 46.020, and that's the number 12 there on the side of the racetrack. That is a Ricardo kart of Logan McClosey. Yeah, so Logan was 17th there before the before the off-track excursion. He is now completely out of the conversation. How about Jake Manalio in the number 91 Team Ferris Racing Kart Republic? An awesome qualifying effort that had a kind of an awkward run in that very first heat race with a bit of a messy start for everyone, but that'll happen with your first career national pole leading the field to green. With the regulations here for the Stars Championship Series, it's easy to follow the start regulations when you're not on the front row, because all you got to do is just do what the guy in front of you does and stay inside the tram lines and kind of hit the gas when he does. But when you're on the front row, there's so much more to manage, Caleb. Yeah, and I also can't put a mention, right, for these drivers. I mean, it's kind of confusing. There's so many lines on that main straightaway, so you know it was kind of hard to tell what lines kind of direct what the actual starting line and starting tram line is for these drivers. I think it was just a little bit of confusion there for Jake Manalio, as one driver's around there. That's either the 10 or the 20. I think that's the 10 if I'm not mistaken here, Daniel. Yeah, that is one of these Sodi Racing
That's Axel Garcia, actually, yeah.
Axel Garcia and the number 70. He's down in 22nd right now with a little spin here in the warm-up. Zane Burgess throwing down a heater that time by. He's gone to the top, but Danny O'Gara has also jumped Manalio along with his MPG Academy teammate, Santiago Orioli. Now, they've been in the top 5 in the mix through the heats and through yesterday's pre-final. But like for many, I'm sure they're searching for a little more speed with the wake-up call that Zane Burgess gave to the field of how quickly he was able to make work of them. Orioli did follow him a good bit forward towards the race leader at the time, Easton Kubinski, for quite a good bit. And the nice part, compared to Zane Burgess, compared to Jake Manalio, is they both, well, those two drivers, Zane and Jake, do have teammates here in the category under the Team Ferris Racing and Sodi Racing USA banners. They're not nearly as close in pace, so it's tougher to do setup changes or gear testing. But for Danny O'Gara and Santiago Orioli, both drivers running at the front, you can try something on either one of their go-karts and really see the difference, because they are both driving at a very high level here this week, and they have been since the drop of the green flag for 2024. Feels like just yesterday we were down in Homestead, Miami with the two of them on the front row battling for the podium, and Orioli snagging a win earlier this year. Danny O'Gara doing a great job to get his first win earlier also. So we've got both of them now looking to just pad the resume, but really coming into their own, and I'm sure coming into this weekend with a lot of confidence, because you just need maybe one, if not two races of running at the front, getting some hardware, getting a good result, and it's almost like you kind of jump up to another level mentally as a driver.
Yeah, no, it really creates a lot of confidence, right, for these young drivers, and that confidence helps them, you know, kind of propel themselves into something else as the season progresses, and before they jump into that mini Swift class next year, that's you know, a whole different ballgame when it comes down to it, right? We've seen the likes of Maxwell Macha, struggled early on in that mini Swift class after a very strong run after a very strong run in the micro Swift class last year. So just a lot of growing pains before they move, but they're doing a great job so far in this micro Swift class.
How about Brody Stoffel in the number 29, jumping up to second here in the warm-up, and jumping O'Gara, jumping Orioli. Jake Manolio put a good lap in late here in this session as the checkered flag flies. He jumps up to third. Easton Kubinski splits the MPGs, and now he'll go all the way to second. But Brody Stoffel, we haven't mentioned him much this weekend on the number 29 Sodi, and making me eat my words a little bit that Zane didn't have a teammate to be able to run with him, because Brody's looking really sporty here in the cooler temperatures at Charlotte Motor Speedway right now. The 29 car only about 3.5 tenths off his Sodi USA teammate. That's close enough that if he can go back to the tent, take advantage of the 2-hour gap they have before their main event, and take a look at the data and video onboard video comparison to Zane Burgess, maybe he can join the mix in this main, because it's a long main event here, folks, for all classes at the Stars Championship Series. It's 18 minutes plus 2 laps for the Pro Show mains. Oh wow, we've got problems. That is the 8 and the 61. Slate Harrell in the number 8 car on the Super Tune USA Paralyn, and the 61 LN car of Warnowick's, Darius Warnick's, also collected, but doesn't look like there was too much damage, if anything, so they're able to refire and get back going. And they'll slowly all make their way into the pit lane. Everybody still chasing the number 55, Zane Burgess, on top by 2.5 tenths here in Micro Swift warm-up over Easton Kubinski, Brody Stoffel, Jake Manolio, and Danny O'Gara. Then Orioli, Stuart Wingodshock on the Pennick ends 8th. Luca Thomason in 9th, or Lewis Thomason in 9th, and Marcelo Flores in the 10th spot on the number 5. So two classes have been warmed up officially. They'll go back to the pit lane, bolt back on their race tires, and get set for main event action later on today. All of the semi-pro mains running here before noon, so everyone has plenty of time to catch a flight or begin packing and driving back home here out of Concord, North Carolina. And some really nice weather here to start the day. It's cool, but it's t-shirt weather. The sun's out, and here come the engines firing for the shifter master category. Here's a look at our top qualifier, Matt Machiko on the 603 Magic Kart, who yesterday got shut out from the top step in either of the heat races and the pre-final. But the speed he had Friday, he still seems to have a good chunk of it. I'd say the Marinello boys maybe stepped up to his level and brought the fight to him. But for Matt Machiko, there's a lot of expertise under that Magic Kart tent. And now with another Pro Show round in the books where AJ Myers, the likes of Jonathan Ocasio, Michael Riccio, who had a great day yesterday, they all learned a lot more and had plenty of time, I'm sure, last night to work with their lead master shifter driver and see if they can't get him that last bit he needs. Yeah, no, for sure. And for the Marinello boys as well, right? Vincenzo Saraceno had a good showing. Justin White as well had a good showing. So, I mean, Joe Ruck probably, kind of got his setup down, but he has a lot of work to do today, right? New set of tires for him, but going to have to start from the back of the field after that DNF that took him out of the heat, the pre-final late in that one. I think with 2 laps to go, Joe Ruck, the boot of his spark plug, I believe, came off, and then that was it. And all she wrote for Joe Ruck. But it was Skitchy Barnes who's going to be the driver to start on the pole position later today in the main event for these master shifters. After a battle between him and Joe Ruck, saw that DNF from Joe Ruck. And Skitchy Barnes, the driver who's starting on the pole there on your screen, is Jake Fetter. And one of his first national shifter starts. And has done a great job this weekend in the Comp Kart. The lone Comp Kart in this field, but doing a great job of it, right? Has had pace, and with a long main event to come up, it just kind of puts him to the test, right? How much and how long can he last in that go-kart? Well, talking about putting someone to the test here, that's going to be the name of the game today for the number 1 plate, Joe Ruck, the reigning series champion. Won a heat race yesterday and was fighting for the win in the pre-final with his teammate, Skitchy Barnes. They went side by side. He just clipped the curb and it knocked the spark plug boot off. he will start at the tail end of this 18-driver grid, and we are going to be treated to one heck of a performance, I imagine, out of the number 1 plate, because we've seen him come through the field plenty of times over his storied history with the Stars Championship Series. He always finds a way to get it done. He has so much speed, and he is one of the most active drivers on the grid. Staying fit in the gym, him and his wife, Brenna, are constantly improving their garage gym. They're active at their CrossFit gym as well. He is all about fitness when he's away from the racetrack, because like everyone else in this class, they've got a day job, they've got a business to tend back to when they get out of here Sunday night and go back to the real world Monday morning. But right now, they are weekend warriors, and Joe Ruck is really going to have to delve into that warrior mentality to pick up 17 spots and try to get all the way back up to his teammate who starts on the inside of row number 1.
Yeah, it's definitely a long haul up the field, but if anybody could do it, it's the reigning champion, Joe Ruck, as Machiko there goes by. You see a lot of passes through that corner as well, right? So, just kind of a little bit of a preview to what we're going to see later today. Machiko still not opting to change his line after all day yesterday, right? That was another big story that came out of this Master Shifter class. You see the differences in line between the Marinellos. It was the Marinello of Chatfield, Skitchy Barnes, and Joe Ruck, all deciding to move to the left side of that bump there on the exit of turn number 8. But Matt Machiko in the Magic Kart not changing his line at all, no matter what anybody else is doing. It's kind of like a risk versus reward, right? You don't know if he's losing too much, because he does have a lot of pace in that Magic Kart.
And when we didn't really know what the Pro Stars were going to do at the end of the day of what they learned from the Rock Shifter and KZ Shifter Masters drivers, but the Marinello tent, even their senior drivers weren't necessarily sharpening that turn 8 complex. Everybody on the regular line in the Pro Stars category, so that non-traditional line of sharpening turn number 8 to make that bend a little bit straighter and a better line over into turn number 10 is really only seen by a handful of the gearbox drivers, and really the only ones in this master, only coming from the master category here this weekend. But in talking about, Matt Machiko, Joe Ruck, and Skitchy Barnes, well, they weren't the only ones in the class. They're not the only ones on the top of the boards right now either. How about it for Scott Presti in the 608? This is a look at one of his teammates, a 668, actually his team owner, Morn Van Talk, on the Ralph Schumacher kart for the VTM racing team. They have a special rule under this tent. No mechanics allowed. You've got to work on your own go-kart. So it's all one-man band drivers here underneath the RS red and white colored VTM tent. In fact, there's their bus right behind the scale line. You can see them. So they got a quick loop around the fencing. Now into the pit lane for Scott Presti. He's pulled in. The other note I want to mention here, while Joe Ruck is a second off, he is probably not that slow. I would imagine they took advantage of having to go to the rear overnight, slapped a new piston in that motor, which you are able to do before qualifying, but then your motor, I believe, is set and sealed through to the rest of the weekend, and I'll need to get some confirmation on that. But for Joe Ruck, he's going to the rear anyway. So if they want to try a new engine or go in, throw a new piston in that motor, which with the KZ open class, you do wear those out because you're building them to the ragged edge. So it might give him an advantage in the main event, but for our sake, we don't know how quick the number 1 is right now, because he was just breaking in that new piston, driving really soft here in warm-up, and that's why he's showing down in 11th place. So don't worry, Joe Ruck fans. We know that he's fast, and he knows that he's fast, but I think this was really a true warm-up and technically a break-in session for the reigning champion. He's already bailed out and gone into the pit lane after that. There's only about half the class running, at least for now. Skitchy Barnes still is, although he also is a good ways off here in warm-up. I mean, he is not as fast as I think anyone would have expected. I don't know if there's anything else. He's just kind of checking out here in the morning. He said he felt really good with the kart setup, said he hasn't changed a single thing on the chassis since he's gotten here, flying in from Bermuda earlier this week. But he's 8th, 41.891. His personal best came last time by. That's still about a half second off of now his teammate, Brian Chatfield, who goes to the top.
Yeah, so Chatfield, the third of the Marinello drivers out here that was fighting at the top yesterday. He's in the 619, 41.223. There he is on your screen, going down the back straightaway. So not too bad of a morning for Brian Chatfield. Scott Preston, we saw him go into the pits. He's second. Matt Machiko currently third in the Magic Kart. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he's still out there on the racetrack. Jake Fetter in the Comp Kart, he's in the pits. He's currently fourth. And Mike Rivera, the top of the Rock class here at the moment, currently fifth, the reigning Rock champion. Skitchy Barnes going to want to go a couple of spots better. And I mean, Xander, yesterday there was a little bit of a difference, in between some of the engines, right? You see the 600 numbers, all those are KZs, and then the 500 numbers and the one of Mike Rivera are all Rock motors. What's the big difference in between two of these big engine packages in the shifter class?
Well, so first off, there is a 10-pound weight break, so the Rock gets to run 10 pounds lighter than the KZs. The KZs are obviously, this is the category that all of the different engine manufacturers build on for all of the international races. This is the pinnacle of the sport. The Rock engine is based loosely off of the Vortex factory KZ, with a few tweaks to try and help for longevity and to make it more of a spec class. So it's run in the Shifter Master class. In the scoring, you have the option to run it at a 10-pound weight advantage. You also do get some individual Rock contingency prizes and your own trophy podium. So Skitchy Barnes, if he wins the overall, or if he doesn't, right now he's still a little bit ahead of Mike Rivera. And you can tell the difference of who's on those Rock motors by the 500 number, or in the case of Mike Rivera, well, he's tougher because he's the number 1 plate, but he's got a blue plate, whereas Joe Ruck has a red plate for the number 1 in KZ. The 600s are the KZ. So it's a little bit slower. It really changes on the racetrack as well of which kind of suits the difference in power. We get to maybe a track more like Newcastle, and you'll see, I think, a bit of a bigger difference of those KZs. But in the mid-range here, the Rock motor seems to be pretty even. The only time that we saw Skitchy really lose a little bit or struggle or get past easily was at the end of that back straightaway into turn number 8. That's the only really top speed section of this racetrack, top end rev range that anyone's seeing. The only time that those OKNs or OKNJs are hitting the rev limiter at the end of the backstretch, the only time that the KA is really making any draft passes are down at the backstretch as well. Everything else is kind of right in the middle it's not too slow, not too fast. And I think that is why this weekend we're seeing the two motors run a lot closer in performance than maybe when we go to later this year, like the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati that has a really long straightaway and some very slow sections. Newcastle Motorsports Park that has some long straightaways. Then we'll come back to Trackhouse Motorplex, which also has a lot of mid-range, only really one high-speed section at the end of the backstretch and one low-speed section at turn number 8. So you have an open, relatively open, within rules, builders class with multiple manufacturers for the KZ portion. The Rock is a spec engine, detuned a little bit for the Vortex KZ to try and last a little bit longer. So for that, they get a 10-pound balance of power weight break. Switching, though, back to a spec category, KA Junior onto the racetrack. And, we started with 59 of them here this weekend. And it ran then after qualifying. We split them in half for 2 groups that went through 2 rounds of heat races apiece. Your point tally after the heat races then sent you into your pre-finals, pre-final B and pre-final A. Pre-final A were the top 30 in the points. They set their first starting positions first through 30th, with a couple drivers having some misfortune that'll start back in the high 20s to 30th. But then pre-final B, that was the high intensity, high drama, and definitely desperation level move style racing with the B pre-final, because only the top 10 out of that race made it through to today. We had to cut off the bottom 19 drivers from the field. Unfortunately, they did not get to continue into today's main event, so their weekend ended Saturday evening. And now we've got our final 40 all together. And for the most part, I don't think there was anyone overly fast that really missed out in the KA Junior or KA Stars classes. So this really is the best 40, not the best that had a little bit of luck, but the best 40 drivers that have come here this weekend And for many of them, this is only maybe session number 2, session number 3 that they're on track with some of the other ones because they were split apart for the practices by even and odd numbers. They were split apart in qualifying for a fast and a slow group. Then they were split apart again through the heat races before finally coming together in pre-final A. So if you had someone, if I had an even number, you had an odd number, we both were fast, we would have seen each other probably in qualifying, and we would have seen each other in pre-final A. Beyond that, we wouldn't have really been on track at the same time. So that kind of adds a different dynamic because in the heat races, for example, Enzo Vidmontien, Max Christia, they were the top of their group. And then on the flip side, Michael McGoy, Isaac Malka were quick over in the other group. And then we put them all together for pre-final A, and the 4 of them were neck and neck, along with Ty Fisher.
Yeah, Ty Fisher, the driver, starting on the inside, on the front row, on the pole position in today's main event after a great move by him on the exit of the hairpin to go through on Enzo Vidmontien and Isaac Malquit while they were all fighting for the lead of this race. As well as Michael McGoy, one of the drivers who was up there. A lot of different winners. We had 4 KA Junior heat races. McGoy took the first one of his group. Vidmontien swept both of his heats, and then Isaac Malquit, another one of the winners in his heat races. But Ty Fisher in the TB kart, able to put it on the pole position for today. And you see him there lapping in his 807 TB kart race lab machine, and doing a good job. A new livery this weekend, looking good for Ty Fisher.
Yeah, Ty Fisher with that updated sticker kit for the green and white TB kart, and he's the only one in the category running it. Now, here comes everyone else's quick times as the tires start to build some heat. Max Christia, Enzo Vidmontien to the top. Max Weiland to third, Market fourth. How about the lap there from Landon Boer on the MPG Academy number 820 Kart Republic. The red and white machine headed through, I believe, turns 3 and 4 right now. He's wicked quick. Vidmontien drops all the way to fourth as Malkit goes by, but that'll happen here as this session goes on through. He's Enzo's following Carter McMurray. We'll try to drop around and see if we can't find the likes of Landon Boer in the 820 MPG Academy machine. Isaac Malkit to the top. Now Vidmontien will go a little quicker. There's Malkit coming through the final corner of the backstretch, turn number 8, about midway through the lap. Tristan Murphy will jump into the top 5. Cameron Marcia does as well, and Boer again just crossed the line, and a big lap to go to second. So while Vidmontien has gone to the top, Landon Boer, we've talked about him a little bit. He's had a so-so weekend, I think it's fair to say at this point, but this is a big leap forward with this consistent pace that he's putting together right now, as there is a big gaggle of carts there coming out of turn 8. Yeah,
Balog there, Gabriel Balog in the Magic Kart involved in that gaggle that you see there. And there's the 820 of Landon Boer. Walked over to the garages here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Was just checking in on some of the teams over there that we haven't seen so far because they're not on the normal paddock. And walked over there, and I mean the energy in that MPG Academy tent or garage was just different this morning. They have the music going. Everybody's in good spirits. They have a lot of drivers in the main events, and they're all just really ready to go. They have a lot of fast junior drivers and a couple of their senior drivers as well have been super quick all weekend. So very, very high energy for this MPG Academy team and high expectations for them across all classes.
And a short junior rookie season for Landon Boer last year still kind of puts him as a provisional rookie for 2024, but this is the year that they were expecting to really start to get going. He moved up about, I think, midway through last season, so only a handful of major races under the belt for Landon Boer right now. Still sits second here in morning warm-up for KA 100 Junior. He runs, like you said, behind Gabriel Balog now. They've also caught up to Max Mokaram there in the Alonso kart. But Enzo Vidmontien, fastest on the 895 Trinity Karting Group Kart Republic. Well, check that. Right as we pick him up, Isaac Malkit on the PSL Karting Bureau Lart to the top. And Isaac, double duty this week in OKN Junior and KA Junior. Both classes, it seems like he's had a good session in one and then some rough luck in the other. Yeah. He should be starting pretty good for both classes come the main event later today, though, especially here, of course, in KA Junior because it's such a bigger grid, so he needs to start in the top 10 to have any kind of a shot.
Yeah, so going to be important here for Isaac Malquit. I believe he's starting inside the top 4, I think on the second row, if not or the first row for Isaac Malquit. So you know, he had a great day yesterday, and he looks to go even better today. Enzo Vidamontian there, the driver on your screen. This is the last of the big three opening rounds that he needs, right? He had a win at the SCUSA Pro Tour earlier this year. He won in Houston in this K100 Junior class, and just needs to knock off the Stars Championship Series to catch 3 opening rounds in the KA Junior categories.
And now across the line for Max Christia. Let's see, can he do another good lap? This lap will not be as good as he fought through traffic. 15 seconds to go in KA Junior warm-up, but as things stand here for Max Christia, a pretty good bit of the morning here to start the day. A good bit of pace, and that is just kind of a much-needed pick-me-up, because yesterday Max Christia on the opening lap, we saw it and caught it on the camera, that left rear tire was already starting to go. The studs were failing there. The lug nuts were either not tight enough or the stud itself snapped inside. And once one stud broke, then the other two start getting wobbly and they snap, and eventually that tire came off on just the second lap of the A pre-final. So Max Christia starts P30, tail end of the A pre-final drivers, right in front of the 10 that transfer out of the B pre-final. He's got a long road ahead to try and crack up to the top, but at least here this morning, he is one of the fastest and second behind Isaac Malcutt, who goes quickest there at the very end. Enzo Vidamontian, who ends in third. Michael McGoy continuing this breakthrough weekend that the Ryan Perry Motorsport boys have had with him. Another kind of leap forward in his junior progression. Max Weiland rounds off the top 5. Cameron Marcia also a big leap forward here for him. Only his second national KA junior start, and the 804, 6th at the end of the warm-up session for your KA juniors. So they're making their way into the scales. We'll take a moment to step away and return with the rest of the class warm-ups here from Charlotte Motor Speedway. We're about halfway through the practices. Main events starting in an hour and 10 minutes here for the Queen City Gambit from Concord, North Carolina.
So you will finally want to get behind the wheel, huh?
Yeah, I've been shooting for 3 years and I've never got to drive.
Well, you're gonna need some more gear than just your helmet. Why don't you go to shopakr.com. They got their inventory online and they'll ship it the same day if you order before 5:30 p.m. Eastern.
They got shoes,
Yep,
gloves,
yep,
rib protectors.
got those too.
Can they make me go fast?
No.
Here at Acceleration Kart Racing, we've got everything you need to get on track. What happens next? Well, that's on you. Check us out online at shopakr.com.
We're at a commercial break.
Welcome back here as our second cadet category makes its way around the Charlotte Motor Speedway karting circuit at the end of the warm-up lap, and quite a few Swift Stars drivers here this weekend, but they're all chasing one kid in particular, and that is the 149 of Parker Ives, the Ryan Perry Motorsport Nitro Kart driver has simply been flawless. I mean, he has driven away from the field at almost every single opportunity, and in that pre-final, he put an absolute good old-fashioned Southern butt-whooping on the rest of the field, it felt like, Caleb. He pulled away in a class that everybody expects to look like a three-wide pack from lap 1 to lap 20.
Yeah, for sure, right? Ashton Moon was one of the drivers that we thought was going to be close, and if I'm not, I think he had issues at the end or at the start of the pre-final. So for Ashton Moon, he looked to be the driver that could really contend with Parker Ives. I mean, Woon won the first heat race in this Swift Stars class, and then after issues for him in the pre-final, put him at the back of the grid, back of the field. Went later on today for the main event, and then just a lot of work for Ashton Woon to do. But for the likes of Marco Samet, Royce Vega, and others who are starting further up the field, Enzo De Janeiro as well, Santillan, all these drivers just kind of have to work together to not let Parker Ives get away today. Because we saw it all day yesterday, right? In the second heat and in the pre-final. Whenever you fight, whenever you battle, you lose a lot of time. And Parker Ives is not going to waste any time to open up his gap today. So definitely, one of the big talking points, one of the only kind of runaways by that margin that we saw in a class that we thought was going to be so draft dependent, and it just seemed like that wasn't the case.
Yeah, it was not. I mean, he made it look easy and didn't put a single wheel wrong, because the truth is, Parker Ives, granted right now he is quickest right off the rip, and that is a huge part as to why he was able to pull away yesterday. But once the tires kind of came in for everyone, they could match him here and there for times. I mean, he was running no better than they were in a pack than he was by himself. At times, other kids were by themselves and could maybe run a lap at the same speed or a tenth better than Parker. But he was so consistent, lap after lap after lap, running the exact same time, a 45.0 to a 45.1. Just wicked quick, but wicked consistent with no mistakes around this circuit. And that's a tough ask, because we are seeing so many drivers drop tires. We've heard all weekend that, the line is relatively narrow around this racetrack. It looks easy. It looks very fast and flowing. But at the same time, by not getting used by any other circuit or any other race series or, testing during the week, we spent a lot of Friday cleaning it off, laying down rubber, and there is a very clean racing line, and it is very, very dirty offline. And part of that is natural track development as well. We lay down rubber, and then bits and pieces of the tires fly off to the wayside, and they get naturally brushed off the lane. You can see the dark kind of groove working its way in through a lot of these corners, and then just off the side of the racetrack, all those black specks you were seeing on the outside of turns 1 and 2, that's all the marbling. You got a great look there coming in at turn number 5 as well. Just dust, rocks, gravel even, because there's gravel portions at the outside of this racetrack, like right up here at the outside of turn number 8. And you get any of that on your tires, it takes you a whole lap to clean it back off, and that's if you have a whole lap clean running on the racing line. But if you're in the middle of a group, you get past, you're sliding because you don't have grip on the, the tires are dirty. You get past again, you go offline, you pick up more, and you can very quickly slide backwards a ton of positions.
Yeah, so that was one of the big talking points there yesterday. There, the driver on your screen, that's Royce Vega for the Bennett team in the 133. Had a struggling a day on Friday. Wasn't the best qualifying for him. Not what he's used to, being further up the field. Struggled in that qualifying session, but all day yesterday just kind of flew under the radar all day. Kept his nose clean in every single heat race that he had, and he's in with a top 4 finish in the pre-final and a top 4 start in the main event later today. Valentino Santillan as well. I mean, to talk about him in his Sodi Racing USA machine, I mean, for him in the first heat race, struggled to even get off the grid, and he set in with a good starting spot in the main event. And for kids being so young with issues like that kind of knock your brain chemistry all out of whack is kind of hard. But being so young, these drivers have been here before. They know what they're doing, and ended up finishing well off in the pre-final. So Valentino Santillan, again, one of the drivers to look out for, as well as Royce Vega and a lot of others. I mean, the comp carts have also been really quick. The likes of Bowen Green, who's there right behind Valentino Santillan, and Holden Myers in the 136 comp cart, who's currently 8th on the timing charts. But a lot of drivers, taking the mix, but they all have to work together to really catch up to the likes of Parker Ives. But another kid who's been quick yesterday, Josh Bergman in his Trinity Karting Group Kart Republic. He's in the 140 Kart Republic. in the top 10 starting today in the main event, but just really has to put in those clean laps, hit his marks, and kind of get his way out of the fight if he wants to get up there and contend for a race win or a podium here today against Parker Ives.
At least, he's got a great starting spot to do so, right? And this weekend, the spotlight's been on the kid out front, but Royce, didn't start at all looking too sporty for the multi-time race winner that he is, qualifying outside the top 10. Now, Ives back to the top at a 44.627. The TKG Kart Republic of Josh Bergman is second, and his teammate under the Trinity Karting Group banner, Max Christia, is standing by with us here after that great warm-up performance. That's probably, again, a much-needed boost in attitude and positivity as he sets to line up 30th on the grid for the KA Junior main event. Alex?
Thank you, Xander. All right, Max, the weekend started out pretty good for you, but you were busy doing donuts yesterday in the pre-final, so what do you need to do to drive to the front today?
I have to get a really good start, make a lot of passes on the first lap, and then just be consistent and keep on making passes.
Yeah, and the pace looked good in the warm-up. You told me the kart felt good. I mean, where do you think you can finish today?
If the leaders battle and they don't pull away, I think we can get top 5. But if not, I'm hoping for top 10.
Thank you, Max, and good luck.
Thank you.
There you have it from Trinity Karting Group's Max Christia and Josh Bergman. Still doing a great job flying the orange, white, and green colors right now in second. On screen, that is the 104 of Bowen Green leading the 111 of Valentino Santian and then Royce Vega. They are third, fourth, and fifth, all within a tenth of a second of the fastest lap set by Parker Ives at a 44.627. They have just pulled into the pit lane as the checkered flag waves here at the end of the session. That is Josh Bergman. I believe his dad there on the fence line signaling him the number 2 because he was second fastest in warm-up. Talk about a big leap forward for the Micro Swift graduate now moving up to Mini. He had a big breakthrough first career national win last year in Salt Lake City, Utah in June. Then backed that up with a number of good finishes to round off his micro career. And then joining the Trinity Karting Group brigade, joining Kart Republic for 2024 and beyond. And this is a really good start to the day for Josh Bergman, and I think that might be the last little bit that he needed to go and contend for the race win. If he can put a lot of laps together like that, just like his teammate Max is thinking, this race is long enough, you can absolutely get up to the leaders, but he'll need to bank on probably a little battling too. Hope that maybe Royce Vega from third could slot to second and get around Parker Ives and keep that number 149 within striking distance as we take a look down the rest of the field here in the 30-driver Mini Swift category warm-up. Spread of about a second and a half, but only 0.3 separating the top 10 going back to the Timmy Tech Comp Kart of Holden Myers. The other storyline in the Mini Swift class, the Swift Stars, Ashton Woon, his second race back after breaking his arm off the racetrack, unrelated to racing whatsoever. But Ashton won 2 weeks ago in Houston with rods in his arm. Got those out now, and he was fast yesterday. He was kind of the next best to Parker Ives. Started on the front row every single session, battled for the lead and the win in a lot of the heat races, but had a mechanical failure in the pre-final. So just in the same way that we've got a superstar, one of the fastest this weekend, starting from the rear in KA Junior with Max Christia, we'll keep our eye on that red and white Super Tune Paralyn to roll from the back in the Swift Stars class. Now, we go to the KA Stars, and, well, there's a lot of star power in this 60-plus driver group that, again, we've divided now down to the best 40 for today's main events, Caleb.
Yeah, definitely going to be a barn burner of a KA senior race. I mean, it was like that the entire day yesterday. Brandon Lemke swept his heat races as well as Alan Isambard on the racetrack. And, it was a great day of racing for all those drivers. But it's James Overbeck, the reigning champion, starting on the inside and on the pole position for today's main event. Spoke to him a little bit this morning, and I asked him, I was like, hey, you're the reigning champion. Why didn't you run the number 1 plate this year? And he was like, you got it spot on yesterday on the broadcast. I didn't even podium last year, but still got the championship. I didn't think it was right for me to sport that number 1 plate. So the reigning champion doesn't feel like a champion as of yet, and he's really going to want a race win today if he wants to start off and defend his KA Senior Championship here at the Stars Championship Series.
Well, he's got the best place to do it from, right? Won yesterday's pre-final, and it wasn't necessarily a battle, but it also wasn't by luck either. He straight up outdrove the likes of superstars like Brandon Lemke, who were right there with him all the way to the end. Jackson Wolney, who has been a standout rookie here in this fantastic debut. And they're right around each other right here to start this warm-up. Lemke's right there on that yellow and white and green Franklin Motorsports Merlin. Wolney up the road on the SCR Red Speed. But James Overbeck, I mean, he has absolutely established himself this weekend, if he hadn't already, as one of the household names when it comes to KA Stars action. And this has been such a fun progression to see as Alan Isambard, the other driver in that group, slowing there coming out of turns 1 and 2 on the Sodi. He's obviously trying to find some better track position, but closing the book here for James Overbeck. He won the CKNA Grand Nationals in 206 Junior, then came back, ran at the front, and won multiple more national and regional races in 206 action. Got an offer to then go from his own privateer operation with him and his dad to run for Precision Performance Karting on a Coyote chassis in coordination with Brandon Jarsakrak Racing. And so their comment to them was, we'll go help toe the line for you in the Briggs 206 entry-level division if you will help us make that next step up into the KA classes, because that's where we want to go. We want to get faster here. And he's had plenty of laps before in this, don't get me wrong. He's been with the Team Nitro kart operation when he was in his mini and mainly junior days. But Brandon Jarsakrak, Mike Doty, they have done such a great job of helping develop this young driver and taking him to the next level, and he is there. There is no question. That BJR MDR driver is right there. As on the flip side, check out the split screen here. Alan Isambard, we saw him slowing. I thought it was for track position. The 952 has a mechanical issue here in warm-up, and that is a big story, Caleb, because he's a top contender.
He's starting third today, so definitely going to have to get whatever's wrong with that Sodi machine figured out, because he's starting on the inside, probably a better starting spot than even starting on the front row for Alan Isambard today. So whatever issues they have, they're definitely going to have to get to work here in this downtime and figure out whatever they have going on. And speaking of having to do work, the 973 of Stephen Miller, right, starting further back in the field, has been on the back foot all weekend long. Chassis been on the frame table almost all weekend long as well, having to work his way through after not the best qualifying that he would have wanted, and you know, just a lot of work for Stephen Miller to do. We're so used to seeing him at the front, but that hasn't been the case this weekend for the National Motorsport boys. You know, just Miller's struggling this weekend to make moves and to pass and making them stick. So having a hard time here at Charlotte Motor Speedway for Stephen Miller.
Yeah, it has been a month to forget here. The month of April, they were struggling down in Houston. They've been struggling here in Charlotte as well. And, you know, whatever the fix may be for Stephen Miller, hopefully he can find it soon. We've seen him go to the top step of the podium many times in junior, and he was already off the bat, off to a great start in senior. As there is one driver that has lost the right side pod that was going there. Great catch by our cameraman. Coming through turns 10 and 11, so that'll be a meatball flag for the 913, it looks like, maybe the 903.
That's the 913,
913 indeed. So that was, I think, one of our drivers that transferred through.
Jaden Kraus.
Yeah, that's Jaden Kraus. He transferred in from the B pre-final yesterday. He's right now down in the 33rd spot, but that right side pod coming off is not ideal for sure here in morning warm-up. Overbeck the quickest. Stephen Miller, we told you again that this has not been the best weekend, not been the best month for the talented Nash Motorsports driver. Well, now he's at least found something more here on Sunday. 4 thousandths off the pace of James Overbeck, splitting up the leaders there who were dominant yesterday. Eli Warren also right in the mix in the top 5. And here's a look at 2 North Carolina natives who we may or may not see run the entire schedule. Adam Brickley, we know we are going to get to see this man run up front when it comes to North Carolina action. We don't get to see him run the full national schedule. He's pitted with the Trinity Karting Group Kart Republic boys to try and go and put some more Kart Republic hardware at the front of the field, running that Alonzo kart. And him and his dad have had a lot of fun kind of running their own program, running their own schedule for the last few years, but this weekend helping join that massive powerhouse in the making. The Cincinnati, Ohio-based operation has Adam Brickley on the cusp of maybe getting a breakthrough win here this weekend. Hayden Jones right there with him as well, also running as a kind of a dad and lad operation. There's the other Trinity Karting Group Kart Republic contender. Finnegan Bailiff did not have a good run through the heats after a great qualifying. He qualified well inside the top 10, crashed in heat number 1, bad luck and misfortune in heat number 2, and he had to go to the B pre-final. Here's Noah Jackson on the top of the screen as well, as Joe, the third of our TKG KRs right there. He is 10th right now in morning warm-up, about a 10th and 3/4 off the pace. So for him to be this close on his debut with the operation is looking pretty good, because he had some bad luck as well yesterday. That midfield was definitely a massive scrum in the heats and the pre-finals. It looked pretty rough. I mean, the front of the pack, I think, was relatively tame for the KA Stars, but even then, that first heat race with Mason Walters, Hayden Jones, Jared Clark, and more, Alan Isambard, I mean, it got hairy. So we know that this class packs them up tight. We know there's a lot of guys that can run the same lap time, and all the difference really ends up being track position. And when it's that hot of a commodity, they're going to push the limits of, literal pushing and contact. And we saw, I think, a fair share of it Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yesterday, for the drivers starting on the outside, that was the big story that we saw all weekend long, right? I think the only driver that we saw get a good start on the outside was Alan Isambard, right? Was able to rip it on the high side, get the move done, but just with that outside line being so dirty there and being on the outside of the racetrack, we saw the likes of Billy Musgrave and others just lose a lot of time there on the dirty side of the racetrack whenever you start on that outside row, whenever you start on the second row. So, just going to be difficult for these drivers to really, figure it out later today. But that's what racing is all about, right? It's not going to be easy. If you wanted to be starting on the inside, you should have been qualifying in pole.
Well, Marco Maestranzi joining into the top 10 there late in that session. The former X30 Pro Super Nationals champion from, I think, 2014 or 2013, back with his Top Kart USA days. He ends 7th on the Paralyn USA machine. A lot of experience with Marco Maestranzi. He was the other half of that incident with Finnegan Bailiff that sent them to the tail. So he is in the top 10 here in warm-up and with a relatively safe starting spot for the main event later today. You can see on grid that the OKN Juniors getting set to go. But, Alex, what do you have for us there? What's going on with Alan Isambard and the Soda USA boys?
Yeah, thank you, Xander. Spoke with Alan through the scale line. He told me he doesn't really know what the issue was. All he knows is when he got on the throttle, it would go through the rev range, and at the top, it would completely cut out. He mentioned to me yesterday throughout the heats and the pre-final, struggling with power. So this might be the motor gremlins finally catching up with him. Yeah,
that sounds potentially maybe a bad coil or a coil starting to fail on him. Either way, that's only going to progress and get worse. So the nice part is that's something you can swap mid-weekend without breaking the seal and forcing a penalty to drop back spots or go all the way to the tail. So hopefully Alan Isambard can get that sorted out. The Sodi Racing USA team, the good news is they got a lot of time left in the day before their main event rolls. We've still got 3 more warm-up sessions, and then, of course, those lengthy main events will buy them about 2 hours to really take a good, hard look at the power plant and see if they can't diagnose the issue, because that's one of our 4 major players from how the pre-final fared yesterday. It would be a real bummer if we lost one of the major contenders to a mechanical issue before the day really gets going.
Yeah, that would definitely, for Alan Isambard, not the best start to his day, but I'm sure he'll get it figured out by the time we go green later today. The OKNJs, I believe, are getting set to go here shortly, where we saw a lot of mechanical issues at the end of this one. Xander, I mean, the likes of Chase Gassioli had issues earlier on in the weekend. He was able to finish, if I'm not mistaken, but there was a handful of drivers who had a lot of issues. But Gage Korn, the big story, right? Able to put it on the pole position yesterday for the MPG Academy boys, beating Isaac Malkwood in that second spot. So a really good showing by Gage Korn in that MPG Motorsports machine. And then I believe yesterday for DNFs, it was that driver on your screen who actually qualified on pole on the Friday. He had mechanical issues yesterday, and spoke to him at the end of it with Davin Roberts, a broken reed for Davin Roberts. Naomi Garcia, the Sodi Racing USA driver, as well, with issues. So, yeah, definitely a whirlwind of mistakes yesterday.
Yeah, there was more attrition in that pre-final than all of the heats combined, and they had a fair amount on their own as well, Caleb, for sure. Gage Korn, that progression through this weekend has been just a slow burn from the first heat race, just outside the top 5, inside the top 10, to heat number 2, challenging in the top 5 to the pre-final, fighting for the lead and eventually getting the win. Granted, again, some of those major players will be starting towards the back of the field, like Davin Roberts. But in speaking with his dad, Henry, there at the end of the day yesterday, as we were kind of working our way through the pits, said, hey, man, congrats. He's like, doesn't matter. We're working. There's a session tomorrow we got to get through. And then, you can tell me congratulations. So they're still focused and trying not to let their heads get too big here about the main. As you can see, Davin Roberts letting Michael McGoy through. And I'm not sure if Davin may be breaking something in on that OKN Junior motor. Obviously, like you said, the broken reed sidelined him yesterday, but that kid has been in really good spirits all weekend. I mean, qualifying on the pole obviously was a boost of confidence. He's been fast the whole month of April, up front, down in Houston, battling for the win in both classes, X30 Junior, KA Junior, in the mix of it all. Ryan Perry Motorsport has him pretty dialed in here in 2024. And for what, he doesn't look this by his posture and how tall he is. He's also still one of the younger drivers in the class. He was 10 years old running junior last year as he hit the growth spurt and couldn't make the weight or the size in mini anymore. So second year, but basically still in the rookie age group for Davin Roberts, and he is without a doubt one of the drivers that you kind of keep an eye on once you start and roll onto the racetrack for the first practice of any single weekend nowadays. Now, he's still obviously slowing right now, motioning over to the fence, so we'll see if Alex can get us some intel of what might be amiss for Roberts, because, you can see on the time charts, 3.5 seconds off, still not where he needs to be for morning warm-up. On the flip side, Gage Korn, yesterday's winner, quick right now. Michael McGoy, Davin's teammate, 6 thousandths off. When you talk rookies this weekend, we already covered him a good bit in KA Junior. The extra track time, I'm sure, helping pay off in this development, going back and forth to a super fast power plant like OKN Junior to the slightly slower KA Junior. Luckily, same chassis and obviously same tire. But getting double the track time, I think, has really helped expedite that learning curve for Michael McGoy, both here at the racetrack and in just kind of developing a little bit more. And he has been just really making a lot of smart moves. I haven't really seen Michael McGoy, do anything that, you would say, oh, yeah, that's a mini driver driving a bit over his head. I mean, he's been very conservative in a lot of the positioning this weekend. And to be fair, positioning is what won him that mini Swift main event back at the Super Nationals as well, or put him on the podium at the Super Nationals as well.
Yeah, I mean, and he's done a great job all weekend. Very mature driving, very good driving as he goes purple there. 41.450 for Michael McGoy. Isaac Malquit currently second there on the top side of the screen. There on the bottom you see Davin Roberts into the pits. So that's going to be the end of his morning warm-up. Focusing back on track here is that's John Antonino Jr. We saw him crash out of one of the heat races, and he was one of the big beneficiaries yesterday at the end of the pre-final due to all the mechanical issues that we saw from the likes of Naomi Garcia, Chase Gassia-Lee, and Davin Roberts, who's still, battling a little bit of some gremlins early this morning. Malquick currently goes purple, so that Burrell team, doing a good job with the OKN Packers. They struggled a little bit yesterday on the OKN Pro side of things, but for Isaac Malquick, has been dialed in all day long, had to work his way through the field yesterday, but did a really good job of it. And I believe starting on the front row alongside what's going to be Gage Korn starting on that inside. There you have it with the Team USA suit on in the MPG Academy there. And I think, Isaac Malquit was actually disqualified at the end of the pre-final, so he's going to start at the tail end of the field again. So unfortunate there for Isaac Malquit.
Yeah, it'll be Gage Korn and Michael McGoy on the front row when we get to the main event later today. John Antonino Jr. starting fourth, Max Weiland in third. It was a post-race technical disqualification for the exhaust restrictor for Isaac Malquit, so he'll start from the rear on that PSL karting beer alert, but he knows his speeds there. He was quick through the day, like you said, and only 14 cars with a long main. You can absolutely climb your way up the pack. And they're all still learning how to race with it as well, so you can kind of take advantage of that if you've gotten some practice. But we, I believe, do have an update here with 1:15 to go with Gage Korn, Isaac Malquit, Michael McGoy, Chase Gassey, and Lee. Korn's actually fallen all the way down to the 8th spot now as Nathan Dupuis goes better. But Malkit, the fastest in warm-up over McGoy and Naomi Garcia. On the other end of the spectrum, Davin Roberts pulling in early. Let's hear from Alex.
Thank you, Xander. If you remember from yesterday's pre-final, Davin Roberts had the pull-off. A read went on him yesterday. He's hoping not the same issue this morning. He says top-end speed, it's there. Through the corner, it cuts out, and halfway through the straightaways, it completely goes. So for Davin Roberts, he's hoping it's not another read.
So with OKN Junior warm-up completed, now pros, OKN stars on to the racetrack. And while their motos yesterday were relatively tame, comparatively a lot more tame than the Pro Stars category, Caleb, there is a lot of storylines in this class, and it still doesn't feel like we've seen them all race on equal footing yet.
Yeah. Big stories, right? I mean, Caleb Gaffera was one of the drivers that didn't make it out to his first moto after a slow start for him yesterday. But, I mean, qualified on the pole and is going to be starting outside of the top 5 later today. But he had way better tires at the end of the second moto, so did a good job of it. And for Caleb Gaffera was able to take the win with a good margin for him at the end of the second moto.
Yeah, so we've got both of our moto winners here on screen. That's Caleb Gaffera on the top, Paulie Massimino on the BJR MDR kart on the bottom. Now, Gaffera, they had a miscommunication to the grid. You mentioned he didn't make it out there for moto number 1, but he was fast and obviously dominated moto 2 with that fresher set of tires that didn't get used in the first moto. Had 1 less heat cycle and about 20 less laps. In moto 1, he was up on the front of the grid in his grid spot and ready to go, and then they felt like they needed more fuel to make the minimum weight in the scale line. So he just casually, like any other go-kart, rolled it back and then rolled it back forward into his spot. Rolled all the way to the back of the grid where he was off the grid and they could fuel it, and then went onto the grid because you're not allowed to fuel or take any tools onto the grid. Problem is, with the motor connected directly to the axle versus a clutch-driven go-kart, all of that rotating of the axle flooded the carburetor with fuel, and they couldn't clean it back out, obviously, so he couldn't get that motor to fire. So it was a weird issue. We've seen plenty of times with the reeds on these motors. The reeds are very, very thin, and you heard it with, as you mentioned earlier, Davin Roberts blowing a reed in his pre-final. So that's what a lot of people were suspecting from looking at that incident from the outside. That's what I honestly thought might have happened when he was trying to fire that motor up, that he blew a reed. But no, he had flooded the motor with fuel just by rolling it backwards down the grid and then forwards down the grid again. On the flip side, Paulie Massimino had an air leak in the fuel line, so he had basically no power once the green flag dropped in moto number 2. So he had a different kind of issue, but that took him out of contention, and it has shaken up the grid. So we've got our 2 fastest drivers, our 2 moto winners, both with a win and a DNF, and they'll be starting, like you said, outside the top 5, which will be fun for us to watch. On the flip side, you have some drivers who are very consistent, like the number 1 plate, Brandon Carr on the bottom of the screen. New colors for 2024. He's already got a win with Trinity Karting Group Kart Republic back at Homestead, Miami at the SCUSA Winter Series. He's put them on the box, he's got them some hardware, and now he's trying to bring them a championship. It would be the first headline championship for the TKG Kart Republic team since its inception to the national scene a few years ago. They've obviously won the SCUSA Super Nationals. They've won national level races in all categories now, but they have yet to win a headline division title, and Brandon Carr is trying to bring them that with his title defense. However, his former ride with Ryan Perry Motorsport is now in the hands of Peyton Phillips, who will lead us to green after going 2-2 in the heat races.
Yeah, Peyton Phillips, the Austin, Texas local, has done a good job so far this weekend. His first real race situation in the OKN class after he's back for a return for what's set to be a full 125cc season this year, but has done a great job. Coming into this weekend, even myself doubted what he could do in that Ryan Perry Motorsports machine, but he's definitely proved us wrong and has done a really good job in that engine package. Definitely for the Ryan Perry Motorsports team, they have him rolling, and he's doing a good job of it to show his pace all weekend long, and he's going to start on the pole, so going to be interesting to see what he can do from there. But the likes of Nicholas Terlecki there on the bottom of your screen, he's been super quick as well on the host driver development side of things. I mean, he was quick. Obviously, a pushback bumper put him on the back foot at the end of the first moto, but definitely one of the drivers to watch. He was the only driver that we saw work through the field, make moves, and make it look easy.
And that's going to pay off here when we get to the main and they're all together and have to race each other. Diego Ramos yesterday had a broken water pump belt. They tried to fix it after Moto 1, but didn't quite have the time to pull the axle fully out of the car and throw a few new ones on. So every time he went out on the racetrack, that motor temperature just skyrocketed. And it's a miracle that it held on. He said it got up to as high as 230 degrees yesterday. So Diego Ramos, for reference, folks, you want those motors no hotter than 140. When it gets to 140, you see the radiator flaps they got, the driver instantly is rolling it down. Sometimes to keep it in the 130 to 125 range. That's peak temperature. That motor gets that hot, it's not going to perform well. And we saw him in the scale line motioning to the rear axle to Brandon Carr at the end of Moto number 2 yesterday. We found out later that's what he was referencing, because these do not have onboard internal cooling systems. They have a belt-driven water pump. So it's the pump spins based on a belt that runs around the axle and then onto the pulley of the pump itself. So if that axle spins, then in theory you're pumping water through the motor, getting over to the radiator, then back over to the engine side, and the system flows. If that belt snaps off the axle, the water just sits in the motor and gets hot. The water sits in the radiator and stays cold, and you basically lose all of your engine cooling capabilities. So that's what was happening for Diego Ramos yesterday, and that lack of power, that lack of pace that he had in the motos, that means that he could be a dark horse, because he still stayed inside the top 5 in both motos with an engine that was heavily overheating. So you've got Caleb Gaffera who is top of the boards, and Paulie Massimino, who start mid-grid, and then Diego Ramos, who has put together 2 consistent finishes, but starts at the tail. This is Aiden Lourenco, top of the screen, and this is not the way you want to start Sunday. With a mechanical failure here in the warm-up session, he just put in a lap time right before this that put him 7th. But the Fox and Sun karting team, they have struggled as the weekend has progressed, unfortunately. Wesley Gunler had a good run in Moto 2. Lourenco, a good run in Moto number 1. They were not able to crack the top 5, but they were kind of getting closer, it felt like, with a different driver each time. Then, of course, you go back, you have some of the other teammates like Aiden Fox. I caught up with Tommy Traylor last night. They were really looking for pace, and they decided to take a massive swing at the setup overnight and see if it would pay off. Said he felt like they were a little bit too soft overall with the chassis setup, so they were going to stiffen it up here today. But that warm-up session means that either they didn't go the right way or they've got something else still to find. 1.3 seconds for Tommy Traylor in the number 63 down there with Aiden Fox's teammate, about 9/10 off. Josh Holtz, who was fighting inside the top 10, in the top 5, 5th, 6th for a moment on the early stages of both motos before fading backwards. 13th for him. Brandon Carr down in 12th there, 6/10 off. How about it for Kieran Rogers and Shea Aldrich, pair of rookies there in the RPM Tony karts inside the top 10. And then you go back here to Ming Nan Zhu, Theo Corelli, another one of the Fox and Sun karting machines, Daniel Piercy and Nolan Rocco down in 18th and 19th here at the closing of warm-up for OKN Pro Stars. But Caleb G, quickest, and Nick Terlecki puts the Host DD Tony Kart second, just 800ths off. So the progression continues for the number 88 of Nicholas Terlecki. Peyton Phillips there third, Diego Ramos fourth, and Massimino fifth ahead of Gunler, and then Lourenco, who will have to ride the recovery vehicle into the scales. Now from one pro category to another, talk about a roller coaster day after you end Friday basically on top of the world. Ian Quinn, 1/1000th off the pole of A.J. Myers, slated to start second. Then that cable to the right. So you can see that obviously there is the spark plug boot, and then there is the throttle cable housing as well. It basically got stuck for him when he left the pits for Moto number 1. A heads-up move for Ian. Looked over when he felt the stuck throttle, and it spun him around. He stalled the car out, pulled the cable to get it unstuck, and then was able to continue. He had to start dead last, 24th. Drove it all the way up into the top 10 to 6th in Moto 1. Then in Moto 2, hung around the top 5 again with another very respectable result, ending just behind Jay Irwin and A.J. Myers. Irwin had a jump start penalty that credited Ian with second in the Moto. So that puts him a P2 and a P6, which on paper you would have maybe expected for his level of experience and the pace that he showed in 2023 after the qualifying effort. But that doesn't show the full story. 24th to 6th, burning the tires off the thing, driving forward in Moto number 1. And his teammate Jay Irwin said he felt the same, but he had a much easier run to it starting from the 5th spot in Moto 1 because he dominated that thing. He started from the back and pace-wise, I should say, dominated, reeled in, caught, and passed one of the most decorated karting pilots in the shifter categories and in all of North American pro karting, AJ Myers. In Moto 2, he had a good battle with him. He had a little jump start, just got out of the box, stopped, then started with the rest of the field. That penalty, of course, took him out, but it didn't stop him from charging forward and having a great battle with AJ. And even after the penalty for Moto 2, he was still so good off the Moto 1 win. He'll join AJ Myers on the front row today, starting second.
Yeah, and then on that third row, it's going to be Gavin Bailiff. He had a good couple of averages yesterday, a fourth, I believe, but just got stuck in no man's land for him. Qualified third. He's starting third again today, so should be well off for the Trinity Karting Group Kart Republic driver with Safet Haddock III, his only teammate in the field here in this one. Talk about Billy Musgrave, right? Issues from yesterday. We saw him struggle in the first moto where he was stuck on the outside, had to do a lot of work to get himself up the field, and he's going to start 7th later today. And then there's AJ Myers there on your screen in the 200. A good showing for him yesterday, starting on the pole position. We know he's Mr. Hole Shot himself. Does a good job of it. And, expecting him to be super quick all day today. There's Vincenzo Saraceno, Justin White, a driver who has impressed us so much. Speaking with Alex and Emery Lida, a lot of these drivers have developed so much over the last year. Justin White being one of those drivers, right? We talk about the returning Stars Championship drivers and the new faces that we see, but for the returning ones, we've seen their development at the end of last year and throughout this year already in the early stages, and they've developed so much already, Xander.
Well, and on the flip side, with this pro show format of 3 rack 'em up and run free practices, qualifying, and then 2 closely put together motos, the talk in the paddock is how little you can change to the go-kart. It's really coming down to how good your baseline setup you enter the weekend is. If you want to make a big stab at it, all you can really do is make those changes overnight. And that's a big shock to the system for a lot of drivers, a lot of mechanics, and a lot of team owners because they're used to being able to be at a track with 4 to 5 sessions with an hour to 2 hour gap in the day, sometimes multiple days of testing during the week, and then a test weekend the weekend before, and you can basically do all of your research and development at the race weekend. You're not able to do that with a pro show format. Billy Musgrave here, he's done a lot of testing over the course of the last few years developing that factory kart, and talking with him last night at the end of the day, he's like, yeah, I haven't had time to touch this thing. I barely had time to make sure I kept the wheels on it. So the 211 of Billy Musgrave was having a blast yesterday with how good the racing was, how close it was, and in chatting with him, to me to Billy Musgrave, me to AJ Myers, assuming that, let's say, we could run the same lap time on our very first ever session in a shifter kart at a new racetrack, which, by the way, I can't. I'm not as good as those two guys. But over 2 days with 5 sessions a day, they're going to find little things in the chassis setup to lengthen that gap. And to me, that's a big takeaway from this pro show, that, yes, you do have less time to learn the track. And, yes, if you start on the wrong foot, you're going to be a little bit further off. So you don't get as much hand-to-hand coaching and hand-holding to pick up the speed, but the real experience and the expertise of these pros, it doesn't come in as handy, and that's kind of kept, I think, our field a little bit tighter. Billy and I both agreed that, everyone's in the same boat. We're all kind of keeping with a box stock kart, so while Billy might know to make a change that maybe Josh Conker wouldn't know, being his first time on the go-kart, or the likes of Michael Riccio on the Magic, or anyone else, well, he can't do that to separate himself, and that's what's kept everyone so closely packed together. Now, Josh Conker, on the flip side, while chatting with Billy on the JMF Racing tent, they felt like they were a little bit too lean on horsepower, but he absolutely does like the baseline setup they've got him on here this weekend for that factory kart, and he thinks that if they can get that engine dialed in, that he is absolutely going to be up there with the rest of the drivers in the top 5, because that was puzzling for us here, Caleb. We talked about some guys that had stepped it up based on their Moto 2 and Moto 1 results, but our top contenders from last year, like Vincenzo Saraceno, Talon Yockel, Josh Conker, they could not crack the top 5.
Yeah, that was one of the big talking points that we had, and you know, just again, competition way higher, continues to elevate. It's way bigger than what it was last year. You have Jay Irwin coming all the way from New Zealand to race this pro show format that he likes so much. AJ Myers, you know, taking the reins for the Magic Kart team and racing here at the Star Championship Series as well to help out either Michael Riccio and to have a championship berth. And I was saying yesterday, on paper, it looks like, oh yeah, it looks like a AJ Myers type of weekend, right, running away with it. But it hasn't been that way at all this weekend. AJ Myers has had to fight against Jay Irwin, and they've kept them honest all weekend long, falling behind even Ian Quinn, a driver who, you know, was probably top 5 guy, edge of the top 5, a podium last year. But on paper, it looked like AJ Myers weekend, and that hasn't been the case. That hasn't been the story. Everybody has stepped up their game this year, and it's really cool to see because it's, like you said, the new pro show bringing this field tighter and closer together.
Well, here's a look at two of the TKG Kart Republics with 30 seconds to go in warm-up. Gavin Bailiff trailing Safik Haddock the third. Bailiff right now is 5th on the time charts, 2.5 tenths off of AJ, who just went quickest overall on the weekend, a 40.01. Fastest lap we have seen of any category, of any session this weekend. AJ Myers here on Sunday morning warm-up, a 10.5 clear of the field. That is the AJ Myers we've come to know here, Caleb. So don't speak too soon about an AJ Myers runaway, because he just definitely found something last night. Myers, he said for a lot of this weekend that he just needed to work on his driving a little bit. He felt like there was so much he was leaving on the table as he learned how to take a gearbox kart around this racetrack. As the checkered flies, a 40.01 for AJ, a 40.16 for Ian Quinn, a 40.17 for Billy Musgrave, 3 thousandths off of Musgrave to Jay Irwin. I mean, you couldn't paint it closer for 2, 3, 4. That's literally 15 thousandths of a second from Ian Quinn to Jay Irwin. Gavin Bailiff about another 10th of a second off of them. Talon Yockel a 10th back from Bailiff. But for everyone, this is one more wake-up call before the day gets going, that AJ Myers is still AJ Myers, and he's going to find speed by the time we get to Sunday, and he has definitely found something here. Final time for them all to practice the starts here as they come to a halt on the back straightaway. You can see everyone forming up there on the inside. Looks like one maybe had stalled out. That was taking pulls for a second. She's okay. And the last few will file into line to get one more dry run at it before they line up for their pro show mains later today. Michael Riccio, 9th in the warm-up, half a second off his Magic teammate. I wouldn't be surprised if the two of them went out with some differing setups to both come back and compare, because this is the biggest gap in a single day that they have for sessions. We know the track is going to change quite a bit from now till 2 p.m. when they go out for their main. But that said, it's still going to be similar enough with a different day from yesterday to today that they could really take a big experimental run on the chassis or engine tuning here this morning and then make a change back either direction they need to go for the main, because there's about 4 hours before these guys will be back on the circuit. So that's a look at how they wrapped up here from the morning warm-up sessions for Pro Shifter. There was Josh Conker just doing a little bit of a debrief there across the fence line, chatting with his dad. Frankie Idavea, Justin White in view, taking polls as well there on the Magic Kart. They're all making their way into the scales, and we get a short 20-minute gap here before the semi-pro main events do get rolling here, folks. So we're going to cut this broadcast now. We will return to KC Premium members. So make sure that you've got your membership live and active, because that'll be how you can watch all of the main events and the Mazda Motorsports presenting Pro Show in the afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. So we'll be back at 9:50 with the main event live stream here on Kart Chaser.